Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. A federal judge has lifted the block on President Trump's federal buyout program. How much of the federal workforce the White House says it will cut.
President Trump signals that momentum for peace in Ukraine is building. More on his talks with Zelensky and Putin.
The Justice Department is suing the state of New York over its immigration policies. Among the defendants are Governor Kathy Hochul and State Attorney General Letitia James.
Communities are bracing for 3 storms expected to impact the U.S. this week, bringing both snow and heavy rainfall, threatening California with mudslides in the wake of LA's historic wildfires.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell was in the hot seat again on Capitol Hill, testifying before Congress on the national debt and inflation.
An iconic German sports car brand seeing a drop in share price following disappointing sales on its all-electric models. An automotive industry expert gives his analysis on what Porsche needs to do to get back on track.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD. I'm Carrie Dunst.
Welcome. I'm Evelyn Lee. Today is Thursday, February 13th. Topping this morning's news, we start with the latest development of the ceasefire agreement in the Middle East.
The Hamas terrorist group said it will release Israeli hostages as initially planned. That follows a dispute over the terms of the ceasefire deal.
Israel has not responded to the statement from Hamas yet, and it's not clear whether this will be enough to resolve the dispute between the two sides.
16 of the 33 hostages scheduled for release have been freed so far, while 656 Palestinian prisoners from a list of 2,000 have been released by Israel.
Now, the Trump administration can now go ahead with its buyout plan for federal workers.
A federal judge lifted the block placed earlier on the program, freeing tens of thousands of civil servants to take the buyout. Here are the details.
U.S. District Judge George O'Toole in Boston said Wednesday there was no legal standing to block President Trump's federal downsizing program. O'Toole also said the court did not have jurisdiction over the matter. The unions who had sued to block the buyout did not immediately say whether they would appeal the judge's decision. The White House says around 75,000 workers, or 3% of the federal government's civilian workforce, have signed up to take the buyout. The Trump administration has promised to pay their salaries through October without requiring them to work. But current spending laws expire March 14th, and unions argue there's no guarantee salaries will be funded beyond that point. In a statement, the Office of Personnel Management said, quote, "There is no longer any doubt the deferred resignation program was both legal and a valuable option for federal employees." As part of his plan to cut spending, Trump has enlisted Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to comb through payment and personnel records. On Wednesday, the White House released receipts on federal contracts it says DOGE helped cut.
These are screenshots of contracts that DOGE found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. That is against the president's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that DOGE identified. I can continue to go through these.
Democrats have criticized Trump and DOGE for a lack of oversight and transparency. The White House pushed back on this argument, saying Musk is being closely watched.
Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing. So there's great transparency.
On Wednesday, NASA said DOGE planned to examine the space agency's spending. Acting Administrator Janet Petro told reporters hundreds of NASA employees had accepted Trump's buyout plan. Elon Musk's SpaceX has roughly $15 billion in contracts with NASA. Most of them are for bringing astronauts to and from the International Space Station and to land astronauts on the moon. When asked if this created a conflict of interest, Petro said NASA has very strict conflict of interest policies. She said the agency's legal office would vet any DOGE employees for such conflicts. Meanwhile, DOGE announced Wednesday night its website is now live. It currently has a feed of the panel's social media posts and charts summarizing various aspects of the federal government. DOGE says details on cost-cutting and how much it says it has saved will be up soon.
Trump is expected to hold a news conference today to review what he says DOGE has uncovered.
A look now at the Russia-Ukraine conflict. President Trump says both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed a desire for peace in separate phone calls with him yesterday.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that as Trump orders top U.S. officials to begin talks on ending the war in Ukraine.
President Trump says he thinks momentum for peace is building.
President Putin wants peace, and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
Trump said his over hour-long talk with Putin gave him insight on what the Russian leader is thinking about the war.
But I think I can say with great confidence he wants to see it ended also. That's good.
Trump announced on Wednesday that he will soon meet with Putin in person.
We expect that he'll come here and I'll go there, and we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia the first time. We know the Crown Prince, and I think it'd be a very good place to meet.
When asked if President Zelensky is being excluded from the peace process, Trump dismissed the concern.
No, I don't think so, as long as he's there. But, you know, at some point you're going to have elections, too.
Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed and sworn in as Director of National Intelligence on Wednesday.
I've watched her for years on different shows and everything. I said, she's a woman of great common sense, and, you know, we like the common sense.
I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me to fulfill this critical position as Director of National Intelligence at any time, but specifically during this time.
Gabbard discussed Trump's recent speech at the National Prayer Breakfast.
You made a statement about your legacy of wanting to be remembered as a peacemaker. I know that I can speak for many of my fellow service members who are here today, veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, how deeply that resonates with us. For those who volunteer to put their lives on the line when duty calls.
Gabbard, a former Congresswoman, served in the U.S. House from 2013 to 2021 and holds the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She made history as the first Hindu to serve in both the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Cabinet. Gabbard met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington on Wednesday. Modi wrote on X that he congratulated Gabbard on her confirmation, adding that they discussed various aspects of the India-USA friendship. He says Gabbard has always been a strong supporter of it. Trump and Modi will hold a press conference on Thursday. Their discussions are expected to focus on areas such as two-way trade, energy, technology, and immigration. President Trump said Wednesday that he will soon unveil his long-anticipated reciprocal tariffs policy. He plans to sign an order this week requiring that U.S. tariffs on imports match the tax rates charged by other countries. Trump said he delayed the announcement to avoid overshadowing Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation as Director of National Intelligence. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The United States has a new Director of National Intelligence this morning. Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in, as we just saw yesterday, after a 52-48 Senate confirmation vote. Joining us now to discuss is NTD contributor Mike Leon, who is also host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. Early this morning, Mike, I hope you got your coffee. It's always good to see you. We saw a near party line vote, and Tulsi Gabbard was considered one of Trump's more controversial picks. Why is that? Mike, I think we're having a little trouble with your audio. Let's hold on one second while we get that going. Go ahead and give it another try, Mike. Mike, you know what? We're going to come right back to you once we get the audio switched, and we'll do this after the next segment. Sorry about that. And the Senate is expected to vote today on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination to head the Department of Health and Human Services. The Senate voted 53-47 along party lines yesterday to limit debate on Kennedy's nomination. Kennedy faced fierce opposition from Democratic senators, primarily over his positions on vaccines. If confirmed, Kennedy would head the nation's top health agency that oversees agencies such as the FDA and the CDC.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced a new lawsuit against the state of New York for protecting illegal immigrants from arrest.
NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the story.
Attorney General Pam Bondi announced on Wednesday that the Justice Department is suing New York over its so-called sanctuary city laws, which prevents law enforcement from arresting illegal immigrants. Bondi says that the DOJ filed the suit against the state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul, Attorney General Letitia James, and State DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder. Bondi criticized New York's green light laws, saying that they prevent law enforcement from accessing an individual's immigration status.
New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today. Millions of illegal aliens with violent records have flooded into our communities, bringing violence and deadly drugs with them.
The DOJ filed a similar lawsuit last week against the state of Illinois for such sanctuary city laws. And in announcing the lawsuit on Wednesday, Bondi was joined by the mother of Kayla Hamilton, a 20-year-old who was raped and killed by an illegal immigrant, an MS-13 gang member from El Salvador.
And he had a criminal record in 2020 in El Salvador for illicit gang activity. He came over as an unoccupied alien child, saying that he was afraid of gang activity in his country. Health and Human Services called him a nice boy, and he showed age-appropriate behavior. That fell so wrong when he murdered my daughter.
Last week, Bondi ordered the DOJ to pause all funds to sanctuary cities. Now, it's not clear how long the pause is, but in the meantime, the DOJ is reviewing any contracts in those cities that may break the law. Federal law prohibits state and local governments from blocking immigration officers from accessing individual citizenship status. But several sanctuary cities have policies that restrict local authorities from cooperating with federal immigration officers, and Bondi ordered the DOJ to investigate such incidents. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
The Trump administration has rolled back $80 million in FEMA funds for hotels housing illegal immigrants in New York City. This comes just one day after the Department of Homeland Security fired those involved in making the payment.
I want to see the mayor stand up here. In many ways, this is the first test of whether Mayor Adams will stand up to a blatantly anti-New York City action. Again, this isn't a war. This isn't something for the future. He was calling for this for months and months and years. This was the money that he was calling on Washington to give us. They finally give us $80.5 million, and last night they steal it. They take it back, seize it from our bank account.
City officials are now asking Mayor Eric Adams to take legal action against the Trump administration. In response, Adams says on X that his office has already, quote, engaged with the White House about recouping these funds. He adds that officials have, quote, requested an emergency meeting with FEMA to try and resolve the matter as quickly as possible. Criticism of the funding began to pick up on Monday. It comes after Elon Musk said FEMA spent nearly $60 million to house illegal immigrants in New York City hotels.
And now we're going to go back to Mike Leon after having that little audio glitch. Mike, good to see you again. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure we can hear you okay. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How's everything, Kerry?
Yeah, we're hanging in there. Mike, what is the controversy over Gabbard? Why was she one of the most controversial picks of Trump's cabinet nominations?
Yeah, Kerry, look, I talk to a lot of people in the intelligence community. A lot of my friends are former CIA analysts or have worked across the different 18 agencies out there. And I think there was a twofold part of this, right? The first part is that, and it paid in a package that Daniel was talking about, Tulsi Gabbard obviously served in the Army Reserve. She was a combat medic. I know some folks that actually were stationed with her back in the day. She never has been around intelligence. And this position was created after 9/11. And this is an intelligence gathering position, right? This is somebody that coordinates between the 18 agencies and briefs the president daily with respect to what is happening. So that way we don't have a mix up like we did have again from 9/11, and where the agencies didn't talk to each other. And I think a lot of people just knew that she's not qualified for that because she's never done anything akin to that. The second part was really some of her views that she has espoused, specifically around Edward Snowden, which she was kind of walking back a little bit during the confirmation hearings, and then across some other positions with respect to Russian positions, you know, her like for Syrian President Assad. So there were some things that were controversial from just views that she espoused when she was in Congress versus what she was actually qualified to do with the role overall.
Now, clearly, with those views on Snowden and the lack of intelligence, Trump must have seen something in her. What do you think that was? Why did he want her for the post?
Yeah, I mean, I think this falls in line, Kerry, with some of the other picks, right? Where they're non-conventional, but they are people that were with him on the campaign trail. Tulsi Gabbard was obviously talking to him on the campaign trail. She was an advisor. If you've ever watched that documentary that follows President Trump, she was very integral in some of the debate prep and the way they handled some of that. So she's been around him for a while now as she's crossed over in terms of, you know, from the campaign now to actually working for the administration. But I think it's also that, you know, Tulsi Gabbard, like I mentioned, she worked in Congress. It's not like no one's ever heard of Tulsi Gabbard. She represented constituents. She has been on select committees. So she does know the way D.C. works, and she does have the, you know, the ears of veterans out there. So she does have, you know, this appeal and a pull that she can go out there and communicate on the behalf of the president, Kerry. But I think it's really now the fact that she has to coordinate these 18 agencies and make sure that the information that's being passed along to keep our Americans safe, to keep people that are in some of these posts safe. This is where the rubber meets the road now. And I think he picked her because he said about the common sense thing. But I also think it's kind of like in line with some of the other picks. These folks have been working with him and helped to get him elected. Let's be honest about that.
Yes, Mike, and I want to pivot over to the vote itself. It's the second time now Mitch McConnell broke ranks and joined the Democrats in opposing one of Trump's cabinet picks. Why do you think that is? And is there more to it? Or did he just look at this particular nominee and say, like Hegseth, he had issues with their candidacy?
Yeah, you want to play a fun game, Kerry? Type in when's the last time Mitch McConnell voted with Democrats into Google. You're going to get not that many answers, but it is interesting that Mitch McConnell, and I know he's had his recent issues health-wise, so I'm wishing him well on that front. But it is interesting, and the statement that he put out with respect to why he felt Tulsi didn't meet some of the Senate qualifications. But this is, I've been mentioning this to you before, Kerry. The numbers are not there for people that don't want some of Trump's confirmation picks to go forward. It's always the same 5 or 6 people in the Senate that people always turn to, whether it be Tom Tillis, whether it be Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. These are people that have been around the Senate for a long time. These are people that could potentially lose in a Republican primary. Not Mitch McConnell, although maybe because of the health issues, who knows? But I think the reason why he decided to do this on her pick is a little bit, speaking to folks in the McConnell camp, is a little bit more akin to what I mentioned. He just felt that some of the things in the recent lead up from 2022 on that she has said about some of the global affairs with respect to the U.S. and relationships that we have with some of our adversaries, he felt that just didn't qualify her, in addition to the secondary part, which is what I mentioned. ODNI is a position that is intelligence gathering and really coordination between the agencies and briefing the president daily. He felt she didn't meet those qualifications.
Well, we appreciate your insights as always. NTD contributor Mike Leon, host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. We'll see you soon, Mike.
Second time's a charm, Kerry. Thank you, man.
Up next, communities are bracing for 3 storms expected to impact the U.S. this week, bringing both snow and heavy rainfall, threatening California with mudslides in the wake of LA's historic wildfires.
And President Trump has secured the release of 3 political prisoners from Belarus, his latest effort to help Americans imprisoned abroad. We'll have that after the break.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I've felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and you know, there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy one, get two free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Welcome back. This week, 3 storms are expected to impact communities across the U.S. The first 2 storms impacting the central and eastern U.S., bringing snow to the north and heavy rainfall to the south, begin Tuesday.
While the third storm of the week slams into California, bringing a substantial mudslide and debris flow threat for people still suffering from LA's historic wildfires.
3 storms are hitting the U.S. this week with a winter combo of rain, snow, and sleet. The first storm had tens of millions of people under winter alerts across the mid-Atlantic and Appalachians, wreaking havoc and dumping snow. Students at Virginia Tech celebrated canceled classes Tuesday with a snowball fight. Virginia State Police reported more than 300 crashes and at least 24 injuries.
When the temperature drops, we'll be back out putting salt and sand on the bridges and the overpasses.
The second storm right behind it.
It looks like it's going to be a rough one.
Bringing snow and ice to central U.S. and heavy rain further south. Cities like Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, Des Moines, and Detroit facing up to a half-foot of snow.
Oh, it's straight up blizzard out here. I had to slow down to stop.
One truck driver coming from Denver was stuck on the side of the road for 6 hours, forced to stop deliveries until the roads in eastern Kansas were clear. A third storm expected to slam California on Thursday. Residents sandbagging and installing temporary barriers ahead of heavy rain and possible flooding. Evacuation warnings have been issued in the Santa Barbara area burned by recent wildfires. The region is expecting several inches of rain and has the potential for flooding and mudslides.
We have the whole hillside behind me has been denuded from the fire, and it already slid a little bit, and now we're preparing that it's going to slide a whole bunch more.
In addition to the heavy rain, forecasters say the storm will also bring heavy snowstorms to California's Sierra Nevada mountains today.
Now, 2 crew members who were rescued after a Navy jet crashed off the coast of San Diego are in good condition.
That's according to Navy officials.
The 2 occupants of the EA-18G Growler ejected shortly before their jet plummeted into the water.
The Coast Guard says they were picked up by a fishing boat and transferred to a nearby Customs and Border Patrol vessel.
The San Diego Fire Rescue Department said it later took the crew members to a hospital in the area.
Coast Guard says it has 2 vessels safeguarding the wreckage. Further details of the crash weren't immediately available.
2 U.S. senators yesterday called for increased funding and staffing for air traffic control following a fatal mid-air collision near the nation's capital last month.
The senators said the FAA is more than 3,500 air traffic controllers short of targeted staffing levels.
U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said last week he was reconsidering rules that allowed air traffic control supervisors to reduce staffing before the fatal collision.
He also plans to soon announce steps to increase more air traffic control training and applicants, and could also call for new incentives to keep retirement-eligible controllers on the job.
Now, President Trump has helped secure the release of 3 inmates held in Belarus, including 1 American.
The American requested that their name and identifying information be withheld from the public to protect their privacy.
The other 2 freed prisoners have been identified as Alina Moshuk, detained during mass anti-government protests in Belarus in August 2020, and Andrei Kuznechik, a journalist for Radio Free Europe's Belarus service.
He was charged in 2022 with allegedly establishing an extremist group and sentenced to 6 years in prison after a 1-day trial. An exiled Belarusian opposition leader thanked the Trump administration for helping to secure the release of the 3 political prisoners.
Canadian leaders are meeting with U.S. officials in an effort to prevent potential tariffs.
Canada's finance minister yesterday met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington.
Canada's premiers put up a united front in their visit to the White House yesterday. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is leading the mission. He told reporters that they're getting through to U.S. officials about the potential negative impact of tariffs on both countries.
President Trump has announced a 25% import tax on all steel and aluminum entering the U.S. It's set to take effect next month. This comes after he lifted broad tariffs on Canada earlier this month, following President Trudeau's commitment to boost border security.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is meeting with NATO ministers today in Brussels.
He told reporters yesterday that Europe needs to step up spending to defeat the Russian war machine.
But when it comes to defense spending, even 2% of GDP is not enough. 3 and 4, and ultimately, as President Trump has said, 5% of defense spending is critical. A realization that there is a Russian war machine that has sought to take more and more land in Ukraine. And standing up against that is an important European responsibility. And of course, the United States has been there for a long time as well.
We all want Ukraine to be in the best possible position when those talks start, to make sure that they can be concluded successfully. And as also Pete Hegseth said yesterday, the new American Secretary of Defense, it is crucial that whatever comes out of those talks, it is durable.
Rutte told reporters that both NATO and Ukraine must not be cut out of any negotiations.
This comes after President Trump signaled he would soon hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Hegseth suggested Kyiv needed to be prepared for a negotiated settlement, suggesting both sides may not get everything they want.
He also told Ukraine's Western backers that NATO membership for Ukraine was unrealistic.
And meanwhile, the Chinese regime is reportedly helping smuggle drone parts to Russia to be used in Ukraine. That's according to a new report by Estonia's Foreign Intelligence Service.
It says Russia is still heavily dependent on Western parts for its drones, and that 80% of these come through the Chinese private sector. Last year, Ukraine estimated around 60% of foreign parts in Russian weapons came through China.
And over to Taiwan, a suspected gas explosion at a food court this morning killed at least 4 people and injured 26.
Drone footage shows the aftermath. The blast occurred on the 12th floor of the building where construction was taking place, causing damage starting from the 9th floor.
And in Munich this morning, authorities said a driver drove a vehicle into a group of people, injuring at least 20.
The incident happened near where world leaders were set to meet for the Munich Security Conference. On Friday, top diplomats, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Vice President J.D. Vance, will attend the high-level security conference.
Police said on social media they had detained the driver involved and did not consider him a further threat. No more details are available at the moment, including the motivation of the driver.
And coming up, Fed Chair Jerome Powell was in the hot seat again on Capitol Hill, testifying before Congress on the national debt and inflation. So stay with us for that.
所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms.
Thank you.
Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast?
No thanks, we're good.
They're always in their own world.
What'd you get there?
Twice the work. Twice the surprises.
Just try it.
But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling.
I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Welcome back.
If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines.
3 storms are expected to hit the U.S. this week with a combination of rain, snow, and sleet. Some areas are expecting up to 6 inches of snow, with Virginia State Police already reporting more than 300 crashes. A separate storm is expected to hit California today, bringing heavy rain with a possibility of flooding and mudslides. Evacuation warnings have been issued in the Santa Barbara area in the wake of the recent wildfires.
Federal judge has lifted the block on President Trump's federal buyout program. Federal workers will now be allowed to take the deal, with the Trump administration assuring them their salaries would be paid till October. The White House says more than 70,000 federal workers have taken the buyout. The White House yesterday also released receipts of federal contracts it says Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has canceled.
President Trump says both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky want peace, following separate calls with them. He announced plans to meet Putin soon, possibly in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as Director of National Intelligence. She met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday, who congratulated her on her confirmation.
Attorney General Pam Bondi announced yesterday that the Justice Department is suing the state of New York over its so-called sanctuary city laws, which prevents law enforcement from arresting illegal immigrants. The DOJ has named several people included in the lawsuit, such as New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Attorney General Letitia James, and DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder. The Justice Department has filed a similar lawsuit against the state of Illinois for similar sanctuary laws.
The American Civil Liberties Union has sued the Trump administration over the illegal migrants recently taken to Guantanamo Bay. Last week, the U.S. started using military aircraft to transport migrants to Cuba. Immigration advocates say this will result in the migrants being detained without legal representation. The lawsuit was filed yesterday in Washington, D.C., and it says the detainees have a right to counsel and calls for immediate face-to-face access to the migrants. A senior Department of Homeland Security official says there is a system for inmates to use the phone to reach lawyers. The official says that, quote, if the American Civil Liberties Union cares more about highly dangerous criminal aliens, including murderers and vicious gang members, than they do about American citizens, they should change their name. The House Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency held its first hearing yesterday.
Came during a time of growing tensions between the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and congressional Democrats. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene was selected by Speaker of the House Mike Johnson to chair the newly created Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican from Georgia, highlighted the bipartisan nature and mission of this subcommittee.
This is not a Democrat problem. This is not a Republican problem. This is an American problem. Over the next decade, total interest payments are projected to be $13.8 trillion.
House Democrats charged House Republicans with being complicit in what they called the hacking of the U.S. federal payment system by Elon Musk.
Congressman, is there anything right now that the subcommittee might be working on where Democrats want to pitch in and also cut in these savings?
Well, we'd love to talk about efficiency. I mean, everyone is interested in government efficiency. This is not government efficiency. This is actually just cutting programs, cutting benefits. There are actually ways of saving resources and saving money. One of those ways is not to give billionaires a huge tax cut.
House Republican spending hawks believe that the work of the Department of Government Efficiency led by Elon Musk is critical in tandem with the new subcommittee on delivering on government efficiency.
Democrats are calling what Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency is doing a constitutional crisis. What would be your response to that?
I'd say we got a spending crisis. They're just, as I've stated, the gravy train's on biscuit wheels, and it's getting ready to run off the track. The gravy spigot's about to turn off, and you're going to see a lot of members of Congress squealing.
House Republicans highlighted abuse, fraud, and waste in government spending as the main mission of this subcommittee.
And lastly, Congressman, what do you think the subcommittee should focus on first?
Medicaid's a great spot. We just identified $200 billion in savings. That's a great place to start.
It's worth mentioning that House Republicans unveiled this Wednesday their budget resolution to kickstart the reconciliation process. In this budget resolution, House Republicans outlined at least $2 trillion in government spending cuts. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The Federal Reserve in the hot seat for a second day on Capitol Hill, this time in front of the House Financial Committee.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell was questioned on the national debt and inflation. NTD correspondent Jason Blair brings us the details.
It's the second day for Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testifying in front of Congress, this time in front of the House, for the Fed's semi-annual report to Congress. Inflation and debt were up for discussion. Representative Norman asked Mr. Powell what he thought about the nation's long-term debt situation.
We're on an unsustainable path. And the debt level isn't unsustainable, but the path is sustainable, and certainly it's past time for Congress to work on that. But that's what I can say. I can't say more than that.
And inflation hit 3%. That's according to the latest data by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This also came up in the hearing.
We're close, but not there on inflation. And you did see today's inflation print, which says the same thing. I mean, we've made great progress toward 2%. Last year, inflation was 2.6%. So great progress, but we're not quite there yet.
President Trump said that he thinks the interest rates should be lowered and that it would go hand in hand with tariffs. Mr. Powell was asked about this statement by Rep. Sherman, whether this statement by the president or any other elected official would influence the Fed's actions. And Powell responded with a pretty decisive no. Again, Chair Powell did pretty much repeat what he said in the Senate, that the Fed is in no hurry to adjust interest rates.
We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too slowly or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment.
And Rep. Sherman also asked Mr. Powell if across-the-board tariffs would increase the cost of living. Mr. Powell responded saying that he didn't want to speculate and the Fed would wait until the exact policy information came out to make any comment. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
Rising inflation is causing the cost of essentials to go up.
Groceries and gasoline got more expensive last month, with egg prices at an all-time high.
A dozen eggs cost an average of $4.95 in January, according to the latest Consumer Price Index data. That's an all-time high, and it's expected to get worse. The ongoing bird flu outbreak has devastated poultry farms across the nation.
The outbreak is causing a supply crunch. A spokesperson for Trader Joe's told the Epoch Times it is placing limits on egg purchases.
Rosemary Farms, a family-owned business in California, is donating hundreds of thousands of eggs to victims and first responders of the LA wildfire.
They said they are working with the LA Regional Food Bank and the nonprofit Gather for Food to donate around 270,000 eggs to residents.
In addition, nearly 55,000 eggs will go to firefighters and first responders.
This as eggs are reaching record high prices in the U.S. following a nationwide bird flu outbreak.
And while Los Angeles is still recovering from recent wildfires, heavy rain is on the way, with burn scar areas at heightened risk.
Officials are urging residents to stay vigilant as the storm moves in. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Light rain began falling across metro Los Angeles and Southern California on Wednesday as a powerful storm system moves in, with rain expected through the night. The storm is forecast to deliver between 1.5 and 3 inches of rain throughout the Los Angeles area. LA County Public Works Director Mark Pastrana gave an update at a press conference Wednesday.
We expect more intense rain to begin occurring tomorrow mid-morning and get the most intense portion of this rain right now forecast is in the later part of the afternoon into the evening of Thursday and through Thursday morning into Friday.
He warned that residents in burn scar areas face heightened risks.
It does present a higher risk to our residents, particularly those that are living within the burn scar areas, not only Palisades and Eaton Fire area, but any burn scar area within the last year.
LA County Sheriff Robert Luna reassured the public that additional personnel are ready for deployment.
Our search and rescue teams, volunteers on patrol, and incident management teams have all placed on standby, along with our Air Rescue 5 helicopter crew. Deputies are prepared to assist our community members with humanitarian needs such as food, water, and essentials. They are helping residents prepare with sandbags and passing out mud and debris safety tips.
Homeless outreach teams are also working to relocate unsheltered residents from flood-prone areas. 2 disaster recovery centers, including one at UCLA Research Park and another in Altadena, are open daily from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. to assist affected residents. Supervisor Lindsay Horvath said crews have reinforced flood channels and basins and are ready for canyon roads and PCH, urging residents to stay vigilant. The National Weather Service issued a flash flood watch through Thursday evening. With the rain ahead, Los Angeles is gearing up for Phase 2 of debris removal for damaged homes. To combat exploitation, authorities have announced stricter penalties for price gouging.
Yesterday, our board took additional action to affirm our decision, increasing the penalties for price gouging up to $50,000 and enhancing our enforcement. We don't want anyone being preyed upon during this very difficult time.
She says this will be effective countywide. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Up next, the iconic German sports car brand Porsche saw a 6% drop in its share price on the German markets.
We'll speak to an automotive expert for his take on what Porsche needs to do to get back on track. Stay with us.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade small batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
My dad was a farmer, and when I saw him on a horse, the guy was bigger than life. One of the things that he had a hard time doing was showing the emotion. Maybe it was because the way he was raised, or believing that men provide and they don't struggle. But we all struggle. I want to show emotion to my kids. I want them to know when I'm happy, I want them to know when I'm sad, and I want them to see me working through things. The biggest reward I get from being a dad is watching my kids accomplish a goal, watching them light up. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face. So I make my kids a priority. Whether it's hitting a baseball, a dance rehearsal, you name it, I'm there. They're gonna remember that they grew up loved. Be brave. Be there every day. And allow your kids to know that it's okay to struggle. That even dad doesn't know the answer sometimes, but we're gonna figure it out together.
If you love them enough to crawl into a play place to get them to come down, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Welcome back. Nissan and Honda called off talks today to merge and create a $60 billion car maker.
The decision puts Nissan into deeper uncertainty.
The potential merger was announced in late December, but the discussions soon soured over issues like the balance of power. The two wanted to join forces to better fight off the challenges unleashed by fast-rising Chinese electric vehicle makers.
They plan to continue to cooperate on technology and other areas. The merger would have created the world's fourth biggest auto group by vehicle sales after Toyota, Volkswagen, and Hyundai. Staying with cars, the iconic German sports car brand Porsche saw a 6% drop in its share price on the German markets. That follows a reported miss in expected profit margins and a move back to combustion engines after disappointing sales on all-electric models. Joining us to discuss is Kurt Hopkins, CEO of MCQ Markets. MCQ is a platform that offers partial ownership in rare collectible automobiles. Kurt, good to have you with us. What led up to these market challenges at Porsche?
Thanks for having me. I think one of the big challenges Porsche is facing is just the softening demand for electric vehicles overall, especially in the sports car market, because in sports cars, people want that power, they want the sound, they want the smell. And I think with Porsche, they struggled, and obviously they are primarily owned by Volkswagen. And Volkswagen, is looking to increase its EV sales. Are under tremendous pressure in Europe to do that. But I think the reality is customer demand is just not there, both in Europe and in North America, for this kind of really aggressive EV sales targets.
Yes, are other car makers facing similar challenges related to a quick pivot to the EV production? And what are some of those challenges?
Well, I mean, if you look at Volkswagen itself, they have built one of the biggest EV plants in the U.S. for making these electric vehicles, and it's in Chattanooga, and it can produce, I think, 100,000 of their ID4s, but last year they only sold 17,000. So it just shows that what people expected and for that demand to happen has not really materialized. That being said, in the U.S., demand for EVs is growing slightly. And we saw that in 2024, demand was at 8.1% of all new car sales were EVs. And that was an increase from a couple years ago of 6.8%. So there is some rising, but we're seeing in Europe where it is closer to 15-20% that demand has really plateaued and is actually starting to go down a bit.
And Kurt, when we think about Porsche, clearly an iconic brand, the hero of every 80s movie drove one. Back in the 80s also, you had the branded sunglasses. You mentioned the sights, the sounds, the roar of the engine being part of its appeal. Can you contrast the Porsche buyer from maybe a Tesla sports car buyer?
Well, Tesla is a great vehicle, and especially if you're looking to have it as a commuter car, for your daily driving car that you use around town in the suburbs, then it is a great option because it does have great performance and it's got all the technology, whiz and all the great electric components to it. But I do think that if people are looking for kind of that raw speed and the old-fashioned approach, and then certainly Porsche is what they're looking for, but also Porsche is making SUVs as well and family cars, and so I think people that want that luxury sports car find that Porsche can be a great option, but many of them just do not want the EVs, especially for longer distances. And in our business, we're seeing the same thing, obviously, in these rare collectible luxury cars where we are a platform for people to invest in them at MCQ Markets. We certainly see the demand is for these old-fashioned, naturally aspirated engines that just smell great and sound great when you drive them.
Yeah, you think about that Sunday ride and what you want to do to take a spin on a nice day, which we're not clearly having this week. But going back to Porsche, what did management say that they would need to do to right the ship over there?
Well, what they're doing is they're planning to invest heavily back into the combustion engine and into hybrids as well. And so that's what's hitting their projected profits. There's also quite a bit of management turmoil there. So 75% of Porsche is owned by VW, and 25% is owned by the Porsche family. The Porsche family control the supervisory board. And so it looks like the CFO and the head of sales, who are Volkswagen people, are on their way out. Maybe even the CEO of Porsche is on its way out as well. And they're trying to right the ship, get new management, and get focused back on its core consumer, which are people that love the sport car and hark back to why Porsche was there and built in the first place.
Well, we appreciate your analysis this morning on the iconic Porsche brand. Good to have you on, Kurt. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
On another note, as Valentine's Day nears, Ecuadorian flower farmers are hustling to meet export demands from the United States and Europe.
February 14th will mark one of the busiest days for the floral industry. Let's take a look at the preparations.
Workers at Sacha Rose are busy picking and packaging top-quality Ecuadorian roses destined for Valentine's Day celebrations. In the capital, Quito, floriculturist Felipe Bustamante says his country provides the world with top-notch flowers.
Definitely the Ecuadorian rose is the best in the world. I say so for the size it has, for the length of its stem, and for the size of its head. It is the largest in the world, and that is because it has grown several meters above sea level.
According to the Ministry of Production, Foreign Trade, Investments and Fisheries, flowers are among Ecuador's main exports. Valentine's Day tests the nation's florists and cargo services every year.
This is the peak season for cargo movement due to the Valentine's Day holiday. Our main trading partners, the United States and Europe, have the good habit of receiving many flowers these days, so capacity is doubled, airline operations are doubled, and also the production of the farms.
Airport Communication Manager Luis Galarraga expects several busy days.
This year, we foresee a growth in terms of export volumes in the Valentine's Day season of between 3 and 5%. Considering that last year the volume exported was over 26,000 metric tons, then we hope to achieve this growth of between 3 and 5%.
Couples will celebrate Valentine's Day Friday, February 14th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The more you know. That's new to me. I didn't know that Ecuadorian roses were the largest.
I know, and to see the pride and the effort that goes into getting them from Ecuador all the way to the U.S. And he was very proud of, the elevation at which these roses are grown.
Also interesting. Yeah, definitely a new appreciation for the people behind that. Behind the flowers that you get every year, hopefully. All right, now let's head to a quick break. We'll be back right away after a short break.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is vaping? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. A federal judge has lifted the block on President Trump's federal buyout program. How much of the federal workforce the White House says it will cut?
President Trump signals that momentum for peace in Ukraine is building. More on his talks with Zelensky and Putin.
Hamas has agreed to continue releasing Israeli hostages after a dispute over the ceasefire agreement.
The Justice Department is suing the state of New York over its immigration policies. Among the defendants are Governor Kathy Hochul and State Attorney General Letitia James.
Communities are bracing for 3 storms expected to impact the U.S. this week, bringing both snow and heavy rainfall, threatening California with mudslides in the wake of LA's historic wildfires.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD. I'm Kerry Dunst.
And I'm Evelyn Lee. Today's Thursday, February 13th. Topping this morning's news, we are starting with the latest development of the ceasefire agreement in the Middle East. The Hamas terrorist group said it will release Israeli hostages as initially planned. That follows a dispute over the terms of the ceasefire deal.
Israel has not responded to the statement from Hamas yet, and it's not clear whether this will be enough to resolve the dispute between the two sides.
16 out of 33 hostages scheduled for release have been freed so far, while 656 Palestinian prisoners from a list of 2,000 have been released by Israel. Now, the Trump administration can go ahead with its buyout plan for federal workers.
A federal judge lifted the block placed earlier on the program, freeing tens of thousands of civil servants to now take the buyout. Here are the details.
U.S. District Judge George O'Toole in Boston said Wednesday there was no legal standing to block President Trump's federal downsizing program. O'Toole also said the court did not have jurisdiction over the matter. The unions who had sued to block the buyout did not immediately say whether they would appeal the judge's decision. The White House says around 75,000 workers, or 3% of the federal government's civilian workforce, have signed up to take the buyout. The Trump administration has promised to pay their salaries through October without requiring them to work. But current spending laws expire March 14th, and unions argue there's no guarantee salaries will be funded beyond that point. In a statement, the Office of Personnel Management said, quote, "There is no longer any doubt the deferred resignation program was both legal and a valuable option for federal employees." As part of his plan to cut spending, Trump has enlisted Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to comb through payment and personnel records. On Wednesday, the White House released receipts on federal contracts it says DOGE helped cut.
These are screenshots of contracts that DOGE found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. That is against the president's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that DOGE identified. I can continue to go through these.
Democrats have criticized Trump and DOGE for a lack of oversight and transparency. The White House pushed back on this argument, saying Musk is being closely watched.
Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing. So there's great transparency.
On Wednesday, NASA said DOGE planned to examine the space agency's spending. Acting Administrator Janet Petro told reporters hundreds of NASA employees had accepted Trump's buyout plan. Elon Musk's SpaceX has roughly $15 billion in contracts with NASA. Most of them are for bringing astronauts to and from the International Space Station and to land astronauts on the moon. When asked if this created a conflict of interest, Petro said NASA has very strict conflict of interest policies. She said the agency's legal office would vet any DOGE employees for such conflicts. Meanwhile, DOGE announced Wednesday night its website is now live. It currently has a feed of the panel's social media posts and charts summarizing various aspects of the federal government. DOGE says details on cost cutting and how much it says it has saved will be up soon.
Trump is expected to hold a news conference today to review what he says DOGE has uncovered.
A look now at the Russia-Ukraine conflict. President Trump says both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed a desire for peace in separate phone calls with him yesterday.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that as Trump orders top U.S. officials to begin talks on ending the war in Ukraine.
President Trump says he thinks momentum for peace is building.
President Putin wants peace, and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
Trump said his over hour-long talk with Putin gave him insight on what the Russian leader is thinking about the war.
But I think I can say with great confidence he wants to see it ended also. That's good.
Trump announced on Wednesday that he will soon meet with Putin in person.
We expect that he'll come here and I'll go there, and we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia the first time. We know the Crown Prince, and I think it'd be a very good place to meet.
When asked if President Zelensky is being excluded from the peace process, Trump dismissed the concern.
No, I don't think so, as long as he's there. But, at some point you're going to have elections, too.
Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed and sworn in as Director of National Intelligence on Wednesday.
I've watched her for years on different shows and everything. I said, she's a woman of great common sense, and, we like the common sense.
I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me to fulfill this critical position as Director of National Intelligence at any time, but specifically during this time.
Gabbard discussed Trump's recent speech at the National Prayer Breakfast.
You made a statement about your legacy of wanting to be remembered as a peacemaker. I know that I can speak for many of my fellow service members who are here today, veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, how deeply that resonates with us. For those who volunteer to put their lives on the line when duty calls.
Gabbard, a former Congresswoman, served in the U.S. House from 2013 to 2021 and holds the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She made history as the first Hindu to serve in both the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Cabinet. Gabbard met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington on Wednesday. Modi wrote on X that he congratulated Gabbard on her confirmation, adding that they discussed various aspects of the India-USA friendship. He says Gabbard has always been a strong supporter of it. Trump and Modi will hold a press conference on Thursday. Their discussions are expected to focus on areas such as two-way trade, energy, technology, and immigration. President Trump said Wednesday that he will soon unveil his long-anticipated reciprocal tariffs policy. He plans to sign an order this week requiring that U.S. tariffs on imports match the tax rates charged by other countries. Trump said he delayed the announcement to avoid overshadowing Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation as Director of National Intelligence. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Senate is expected to vote today on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination to head the Department of Health and Human Services. The Senate voted 53-47 along party lines yesterday to limit debate on Kennedy's nomination. Kennedy faced fierce opposition from Democratic senators, primarily over his positions on vaccines. If confirmed, Kennedy would head the nation's top health agency that oversees the FDA, the CDC, and about a dozen other agencies.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced a new lawsuit against the state of New York for protecting illegal immigrants from arrests.
NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the story.
Attorney General Pam Bondi announced on Wednesday that the Justice Department is suing New York over its so-called sanctuary city laws, which prevents law enforcement from arresting illegal immigrants. Bondi says that the DOJ filed the suit against the state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul, Attorney General Letitia James, and State DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder. Bondi criticized New York's green light laws, saying that they prevent law enforcement from accessing an individual's immigration status.
New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today. Millions of illegal aliens with violent records have flooded into our communities, bringing violence and deadly drugs with them.
The DOJ filed a similar lawsuit last week against the state of Illinois for such sanctuary city laws. And in announcing the lawsuit on Wednesday, Bondi was joined by the mother of Kayla Hamilton, a 20-year-old who was raped and killed by an illegal immigrant, an MS-13 gang member from El Salvador.
And he had a criminal record in 2020 in El Salvador for illicit gang activity. He came over as an unoccupied alien child, saying that he was afraid of gang activity in his country. Health and Human Services called him a nice boy, and he showed age-appropriate behavior. That fell so wrong when he murdered my daughter.
Last week, Bondi ordered the DOJ to pause all funds to sanctuary cities. Now, it's not clear how long the pause is, but in the meantime, the DOJ is reviewing any contracts in those cities that may break the law. Federal law prohibits state and local governments from blocking immigration officers from accessing individual citizenship status. But several sanctuary cities have policies that restrict local authorities from cooperating with federal immigration officers, and Bondi ordered the DOJ to investigate such incidents. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is meeting with NATO ministers today in Brussels.
He told reporters yesterday that Europe needs to step up spending to defeat the Russian war machine.
But when it comes to defense spending, even 2% of GDP is not enough. 3 and 4, and ultimately, as President Trump has said, 5% of defense spending is critical. A realization that there is a Russian war machine that has sought to take more and more land in Ukraine. And standing up against that is an important European responsibility. And of course, the United States has been there for a long time as well.
We all want Ukraine to be in the best possible position when those talks start, to make sure that they can be concluded successfully. And as also Pete Hegseth said yesterday, the new American Secretary of Defense, it is crucial that whatever comes out of those talks, it is durable.
Rutte told reporters that both NATO and Ukraine must not be cut out of any negotiations.
This comes after President Trump signaled he would soon hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Hegseth suggested Kyiv needed to be prepared for a negotiated settlement, suggesting both sides may not get everything they want.
He also told Ukraine's Western backers that NATO membership for Ukraine was unrealistic.
And the Chinese regime is reportedly helping smuggle drone parts to Russia to be used in Ukraine. That's according to a new report by Estonia's Foreign Intelligence Service.
It says Russia is still heavily dependent on Western parts for its drones, and that 80% of these come through the Chinese private sector. Last year, Ukraine estimated around 60% of foreign parts in Russian weapons came through China.
Now let's hear more about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's opening remarks at the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Well, we're bringing in Stephen Yates now. He's a senior fellow for China and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Good morning, Stephen. Good to see you. So Hegseth sent some strong messages. Were you surprised? What were your takeaways?
Well, number one, I think that Secretary Hegseth's message has been hiding in plain sight for at least a year or two, if not longer. A lot of it echoes what President Trump in his first term tried to press European leaders about before the second invasion of Ukraine got underway. So I don't think that any of the members of the NATO alliance or other broader European audiences can be surprised by this. Obviously, there's an added urgency. The new administration is pushing ahead on all cylinders very hard and very fast in every policy lane, and this is no less. And President Trump opening the conversation with Russia and having Keith Kellogg in Ukraine today, I think today in Munich as well, to help with negotiations on the Ukraine side of things. They're really on all sides pushing where is the stable ground going forward. So not surprised by it, and I don't think Europeans should be.
Right. So Hegseth also has said that it's unrealistic for Ukraine to keep its pre-war borders. I'm wondering what message does this send to Russia, having said that so out in the open and also before really getting Russia and Ukraine at the same table?
Well, but there have been talks for a long time. The United States has been talking in many, many ways with the leadership of Ukraine. The Biden administration cut off talks with Russia, which is an odd thing to do if what you're trying to do is achieve a durable peace. Whatever war you're looking at concluding throughout history, if you've got a durable peace in some form or fashion, you have dealt with both sides. And so unless you have the wherewithal to bring a comprehensive and total defeat to the other side, which is not where the Biden administration and Europe's policies led us over the last 3 years, then you end up with a compromise. And that is what the U.S. government and its NATO allies are looking for at the moment. We don't have great options. We have compromised options because 3 years of warfare has consequences.
And do those statements, though, put more pressure on Ukraine's side rather than, let's ask another way, what are the pressures on Russia's side coming from the U.S.?
Well, Russia faces some pressure. It's hard for us to see them as clearly because we don't really have as comprehensive media coverage of the realities inside of Russia. There's no question that this 3 years of war has had some impact on the population, economy, and other elements of Russia's way of life. It's questionable whether they can sustain long term all of what they have done for the last 3 years. They are now more dependent on China, not less. That's probably not a happy position for the proud Russian Republic. And there's other kinds of challenges going forward. If there's changes in energy prices because of what the United States is doing at home and abroad on that front, there's a lot of pressure that Russia could potentially be under. So they should find some kind of a stepping down point on where they are with regard to this conflict. On Ukraine, there's a lot of talk about what support looks like, economic and otherwise, in critical minerals, agriculture, the reconstruction and financing of the reconstruction of Ukraine. Among the many reasons why Secretary of Treasury Bessent is there to talk about these things, we want to know where money has gone. But as we contemplate a reconstruction, we want to have confidence we know where that money will go. And so this is preparation for how to make for a durable, maybe second best peace going forward in the hopes of a better long term.
Now, Hegseth also sent some other strong messages, like Europe having to shoulder most of the financial and military responsibilities now, and that he doesn't see the U.S. as a peacekeeping force in the region, but there should be one in terms of Europe and non-European forces after the war. How do you see the rest of the NATO members reacting to some of those stark words by Hegseth?
Well, again, that's continuity in terms of the message that President Trump brought in his first term. And it's not really something that is Trumpism or unique to what his political campaign has been. I think it's an expression of reality. For far too long, there are elements of Europe who do have the financial wherewithal and the military wherewithal to do a better job of Europeans taking care of Europe. And it's not the United States' role to be the first call in case of emergency. It's all of our partners working together to do all they can to deter and avoid a crisis, and when necessary, for the United States to be a good neighbor, ally, and partner and support. That's going to be true in the broader Middle East. It's going to be true across the Indo-Pacific. This is a rebalancing, not for isolation. I mean, for heaven's sake, the United States is involved everywhere at the moment, it seems, in the Western Hemisphere, the Middle East, Europe, and in the Indo-Pacific, in high-level talks, summits, and visits. So this is a rebalancing, not a pullback. But allies doing more of what they are able to do is important. We have $30 trillion in debt. That has to get adjusted, and our allies are going to be a part of that.
And Stephen, it's also, I think, it feels even more pressure on Ukraine, because Zelensky said himself that there is no real security without the U.S. So what do you think does that mean for Ukraine moving forward if the U.S. takes that step back?
Well, I don't think the United States is going to pull back from pressuring the rest of Europe to step up and do what they need to do. The United States has a substantial economic relationship with broader Europe. Broader Europe has a lot that they need to do to revive themselves. Hopefully they have sort of a renewal movement in their polities the way we've had in ours. But if they do more to be stronger economically, resource-based, and fix their supply chains to be less dependent on non-status quo powers, then they're going to be better neighbors, better partners, and they'll also be able to better deter those who want to alter their way of life. But if we don't have that renewal or revival, there is almost no amount of commitment America can give that can fill the gap of that erosion. That's why Russia felt it could take Crimea when it did. It's why Russia felt it could step in when it did during the Biden administration. So we're part of a change of course. I hope that Ukraine, Europe, and the United States can work together on this positive agenda, but there does have to be this rebalancing. Nothing can be worse for Ukraine than what the last 3 years have been.
And just quickly before we leave it at that, I want to focus on China because Hegseth did emphasize the focus on China, and he said the deterrence in the Indo-Pacific cannot fail. So is the U.S. shifting its attention away from Russia and Ukraine to China instead? Is that what's happening, and what could this look like?
Well, again, I think it's part of this rebalancing, and that's why Europe needs to step up and do more, not to stand alone, but the United States has to be a supporting cast in capable areas in order to be able to surge in areas where our neighbors and allies are less capable of reaching as far in inconsequential ways. The broader West or free world has allowed too much transfer of technology opportunity and other efforts to go to China and be concentrated there, and the Chinese government translated that into a massive investment in military modernization and deployment. That has destabilized the Indo-Pacific. China's recent aggression on territorial claims and hazing of the Philippines, Japan, and not just Taiwan has changed perceptions and realities across that region. So the United States does have to invest and focus more. But it's not to leave the rest of the world behind. The United States is going to be very invested in a lot of these areas. I mean, just look at what the president has committed to with Israel and the broader Middle East. There's going to be significant investment and involvement in Europe going forward. It's not leaving these areas behind, but it's necessary to rebalance in order for us to surge in areas where Europe and the Middle East can't help America and our allies there as much.
Got it. Thank you so much for filling in the context and your analysis, Stephen Yates. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And in Munich this morning, authorities said a driver drove a vehicle into a group of people, injuring 20.
It happened near where world leaders were set to meet for the Munich Security Conference. Top diplomats, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Vice President J.D. Vance, will attend the high-level security conference tomorrow.
Police said on social media they had detained the driver involved and did not consider him a further threat. No more details are available at the moment, including the motivation of the driver.
Now over to Taiwan. A suspected gas explosion at a food court this morning killed at least 4 people and injured 26.
Drone footage shows the aftermath. The blast occurred on the 12th floor of the building where construction was taking place, causing damage starting from the 9th floor.
Coming up, communities are bracing for 3 storms expected to impact the U.S. this week, bringing both snow and heavy rainfall, threatening California with mudslides in the wake of LA's historic wildfires.
President Trump has secured the release of 3 political prisoners from Belarus, his latest efforts to help Americans imprisoned abroad. We'll have that after the break.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiong Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed.
A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end and life is renewed once again.
The magical painting.
Good to have you back. This week, 3 storms are expected to impact communities across the U.S. The first 2 storms impacting the central and eastern U.S., bringing snow to the north and heavy rainfall to the south, began Tuesday.
And this third storm of the week will slam into California, bringing a substantial mudslide and debris flow threat for people still suffering from LA's historic wildfires.
3 storms are hitting the U.S. this week with a winter combo of rain, snow, and sleet. The first storm had tens of millions of people under winter alerts across the mid-Atlantic and Appalachians, wreaking havoc and dumping snow. Students at Virginia Tech celebrated canceled classes Tuesday with a snowball fight. Virginia State Police reported more than 300 crashes and at least 24 injuries.
When the temperature drops, we'll be back out putting salt and sand on the bridges and the overpasses.
The second storm right behind it.
It looks like it's going to be a rough one.
Bringing snow and ice to central U.S. and heavy rain further south. Cities like Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, Des Moines, and Detroit facing up to a half-foot of snow.
Oh, it's straight up blizzard out here. I had to slow down to stop.
One truck driver coming from Denver was stuck on the side of the road for 6 hours, forced to stop deliveries until the roads in eastern Kansas were clear. A third storm expected to slam California on Thursday. Residents sandbagging and installing temporary barriers ahead of heavy rain and possible flooding. Evacuation warnings have been issued in the Santa Barbara area burned by recent wildfires. The region is expecting several inches of rain and has the potential for flooding and mudslides.
We have the whole hillside behind me has been denuded from the fire, and it already slid a little bit, and now we're preparing that it's going to slide a whole bunch more.
In addition to heavy rain, forecasters say the storm will also bring heavy snow to California's Sierra Nevada mountains today.
Now, 2 crew members who were rescued after a Navy jet crashed off the coast of San Diego are in good condition.
That's according to Navy officials.
The 2 occupants of the E-818G Growler ejected shortly before their jet plummeted into the water.
The Coast Guard says they were picked up by a fishing boat and transferred to a nearby Customs and Border Patrol vessel.
The San Diego Fire Rescue Department said it later took the crew members to a hospital in the area.
The Coast Guard says it has 2 vessels safeguarding the wreckage. Further details of the crash were not immediately available.
2 U.S. senators yesterday called for increased funding and staffing for air traffic control following a fatal mid-air collision near the nation's capital last month.
The senator said the FAA is more than 3,500 air traffic controllers short of the targeted staffing levels.
U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said last week he was reconsidering roles that allowed air traffic control supervisors to reduce staffing before the fatal collision.
He also plans to soon announce steps to increase more air traffic control training and applicants, and could also call for new incentives to keep retirement-eligible controllers on the job.
Also, President Trump has helped secure the release of 3 inmates held in Belarus, including 1 American.
The American requested that their name and identifying information be withheld from the public to protect their privacy.
The other 2 freed prisoners have been identified as Alina Moshuk, detained during mass anti-government protests in Belarus in August 2020, and Andrei Kuznechik, a journalist for Radio Free Europe's Belarus service.
He was charged in 2022 with allegedly establishing an extremist group and sentenced to 6 years in prison after a one-day trial. An exiled Belarusian opposition leader thanked the Trump administration for helping to secure the release of the 3 political prisoners.
Canadian leaders are meeting with U.S. officials in an effort to prevent potential tariffs.
Canada's finance minister yesterday met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington.
We believe that the national security interest around border integrity and the common fight against fentanyl is in a positive lane, but we're going to continue to do that work. They described to us the process by which they're reviewing these metrics. We also discussed, obviously, our concern around steel and aluminum tariffs and the president's comments earlier this week. We believe it's not in the economic interest of the United States to do this. We have work to do with the government, I think, to continue to make that point.
Canada's premiers put up a united front in their visit to the White House yesterday. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is leading the mission. He told reporters they're getting through to U.S. officials about the potential negative impact of tariffs on both countries.
President Trump has announced a 25% import tax on all steel and aluminum entering the U.S. It's set to take effect next month. This comes after he lifted broad tariffs on Canada earlier this month, following President Trudeau's commitment to boost border security.
Up next, the White House says the Department of Government Efficiency is making cuts reaching more than $3 billion. More on where the cuts are being made when we come back.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges. Oh my goodness.
So Ariel, we made this yearbook for you. It has notes from all the people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. on food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one, get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one, get one free offer goes away.
Welcome back.
If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines.
3 storms are expected to hit the U.S. this week with a combination of rain, snow, and sleet. Some areas are expecting up to 6 inches of snow, with Virginia State Police already reporting more than 300 crashes. A separate storm is expected to hit California today, bringing heavy rain with the possibility of flooding and mudslides. Evacuation warnings have been issued in the Santa Barbara area in the wake of the recent wildfires.
A federal judge has lifted the block on President Trump's federal buyout program. Federal workers will now be allowed to take the deal, with the Trump administration assuring them their salaries would be paid till October. The White House says more than 70,000 federal workers have taken the buyout. The White House yesterday also released receipts of federal contracts it says Elon Musk's DOGE has canceled.
Attorney General Pam Bondi announced yesterday that the Justice Department is suing the state of New York over its so-called sanctuary city laws, which prevents law enforcement from arresting illegal immigrants. The DOJ has named several people included in the lawsuit, such as New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Attorney General Letitia James, and DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder. The Justice Department has filed a similar lawsuit against the state of Illinois for similar sanctuary laws.
President Trump says both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky want peace, following separate calls with them. He announced plans to meet Putin soon, possibly in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as Director of National Intelligence. She met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday, who congratulated her on her confirmation.
The White House now says the Department of Government Efficiency's cuts to federal spending total more than $3.4 billion.
The cuts mostly come from federal contracts. This as President Trump also works to downsize government personnel. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, led by Elon Musk, appears to be making strides. The White House now puts DOGE's financial impact at more than $3.4 billion. Much of it is coming from cancellations to Department of Education contracts, totaling roughly $880 million. Another $780 million comes from a canceled contract to build a new embassy in South Sudan. Other cuts include diversity, equity, and inclusion training in education, cutting staff sent to house illegal immigrants in New York City hotels, and canceling subscriptions to Politico, along with funding to the New York Times and the Associated Press. President Trump this week signed an executive order to mandate that federal agencies work with DOGE on hiring, Musk defending the work of his organization.
We have this unelected fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want.
House Speaker Mike Johnson this week said that DOGE found a shocking number of federal government expenditures that Congress did not approve. And Johnson said that DOGE is uncovering what elected representatives have tried to find for years but couldn't.
When duly elected representatives of the people request information to find all of these abuses and it's not turned over to us, what it takes is an actual audit of the systems and the files themselves that are often hidden from Congress. That's what you're seeing right now. And that's why this is so exciting. They're uncovering things that we have known intuitively have been there, but we couldn't prove it. Now the proof is being provided.
Unacceptable.
Many congressional Democrats, however, see it differently. At the Senate Budget Committee hearing on Wednesday, they were concerned that cuts would be made by DOGE to necessary programs.
Make no mistake, this budget resolution is the DOGE resolution, as it assumes the staggering amount of $1 trillion in unspecified cuts in 2025 alone and $9 trillion over 10 years. Where do we think that those sorts of dramatic cuts are going to come from? SNAP benefits that keep kids from going hungry, public schools, community health centers.
Last week, a federal judge blocked DOGE's access to Department of Labor data in response to a lawsuit from various unions. Another federal judge also restricted DOGE's access to Treasury payment system data. The White House accusing the justice system of being weaponized.
We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law.
In the meantime, the heads of federal agencies under executive order will consult with DOGE to shrink the federal workforce and limit hiring to essential positions. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Now, Congress is holding a hearing on the funding freeze of USAID right now.
Let's take a live look at what's happening at the Capitol.
These programs are bringing other countries closer to us, or that our adversaries are going to gain some kind of foothold if we don't continue doing these programs. That's not what competing looks like for the United States of America. On the contrary, last month, when I participated in a Q&A with my colleague here to the left in the United States Institute of Peace, which will have to explain their funding, the Ugandan ambassador stood up and said these programs were not doing anything to improve relations between our nations. Take a look at the video. Maybe we'll get some audio on it. Maybe we won't get audio on it. Or a 19-year-old, Mr. Burchett. Thank you. Maybe we won't do this video. But I have the video that shows exactly what the Ugandan ambassador was saying. And they were thanking us for not continuing these programs. That's what took place. And that's just one of the countless ambassadors that these programs will not continue, that they're going to come to an end. Yet my colleagues to the left are arguing for these programs to continue, arguing for the people who put these programs in place to go back to work, arguing that the agency that did this be allowed to continue wasting your money. They're going to argue that President Trump doesn't have the authority to do this, but the fact is, of those who were in Congress, all but 3 of them voted to give him the authority in 2024, and it says very specifically in SFOP's approach that the administration may potentially expand, eliminate, consolidate, or downsize covered departments or agencies or organizations. That's the language of the authority. It's not just the content of USAID that is the betrayal. It's the larceny that USAID has conducted. Crooked NGOs around Washington, D.C., swindling American taxpayers out of their money. A recent audit found that USAID's implementing partners were using upwards of 50% of their grants for overhead costs, not life-saving measures. The administration has said that the aid pause is temporary, and they have proven it. The recipients of USAID programs, they can apply for a waiver. I have a list with me. Many have applied, many have been denied, and some have received waivers that actually proved their work was life-saving. Let me give a warning to my colleagues. It will be short-sighted of you if you turn a blind eye to USAID's betrayal and, more broadly, the betrayal within the State Department. Because we are going to bring in the people who put these programs in place. We are going to show to the American people exactly what they were doing. The videos, the documents, the everything, they are going to see it. Like $25,000 for a drag show seminar for Venezuelan migrants in Ecuador And we are going to show you that video. That's the USAID program spending your money. We will be writing these programs out of law as we conduct our first full State Department review since 2002. I would say that when done right, foreign aid can be one of the best tools. It can help strengthen our relationships with our allies that need a hand up, and it can help countries realize that America is the best partner. But it's only true if we understand a couple of things. What does America actually need from each country or region? What does that country or region actually want from the United States of America? Because it's not these things. And it's only fair to Americans if we can prove that a dollar is better spent going abroad than staying in the pocket of an American who is right now hustling and grinding it out at work. And I now recognize my colleague, Ranking Member Gregory Meeks.
I want to welcome our witnesses to our first full committee hearing this Congress. But I would be remiss if I didn't make clear my disappointment in the midst of the chaos created by the Trump administration's unlawful attempt to shutter USAID and pause foreign assistance funds. We don't have anyone here today from the administration to explain, to appear, and to explain their actions before this committee. It shouldn't be just private sector individuals here. We are the oversight of the U.S. government, and we should have members from the State Department, the Secretary of State, Rubio, present. And my Democratic colleagues and I have asked the chairman to have a committee hearing with Secretary Rubio, and I urge that to be done as soon as possible. The American people deserve to have their elected representatives question the administration about the decision to shut down a government agency established in law by Congress. We don't have a king. We have a system. If the administration believes what they have done is legal and merited, they should be before Congress. They should be here. They should be talking to the American people directly. We should be summoning them here. I also want to do away with the myth that this exercise with DOGE and USAID is about addressing waste, fraud, and abuse. Because if you really care about waste, fraud, and abuse, you don't illegally fire 21 independent inspector generals in the dark of night. You don't fire the head of the government ethics office. Just this week, President Trump fired USAID's independent inspector general, just one day after he issued a report showing that the administration's own effort to dismantle USAID is wasting taxpayer dollars and putting our national security at risk. That's what's happening. Our national security is at risk. And I'm asking unanimous consent to enter that IG's report into the record. This committee and the American people deserve to hear from the IG. I would urge you to invite the Inspector General to appear before this committee to tell us about the actual work of addressing waste, fraud, and abuse, if that's what this is really about. Now, many Republicans, this has not been a partisan issue. Many Republicans have long championed U.S. foreign assistance as critical to our national security as a source of United States soft power and a key tool to outcompete China's growing global influence. Despite my disappointment over not having Trump's administration panelists here, I am pleased that among our witnesses today, we have a number of individuals who are Republicans. I look at my former colleague, Ted Yoho, who I have traveled with on several times, several CODELs, and we visited USAID programs. I know when you go and travel and see firsthand the work of dedicated USAID Foreign Service officers, civil servants, and local staff to whom we owe our gratitude and our thanks, not the dishonor shown to them by wealthy billionaires with a social media platform. Now, I only have a few minutes left, so I won't spend my time debunking every mischaracterization or outright lie we've heard from the Republican distractors of USAID. These are distractions meant to obscure the critical work USAID does. I instead submit into the record the stories by the Washington Post, the New York Times, fact-checking and dubious claims made by the Republicans.
Do you have them?
Yes.
So ordered.
And what I will use my time on is making clear that this hearing title, the USAID betrayal, is absolutely correct, because this is a betrayal. The Trump administration is betraying our national security. It is betraying our allies. It is betraying the Americans who carry out USAID's mission in some of the world's most challenging and dangerous places. It is betraying the generosity of the American people, and it is betraying the investments Americans have made for decades to stop diseases before they spread, to make sure girls have the same educational opportunities as boys, and to make sure that the innocent victims ravaged by war or natural disaster have basic human necessities. It's betraying babies who have been born with HIV in the last 3 weeks who could have been born HIV-free if only we continued to provide their mothers with the necessary medication they were sitting on the shelves. It's betrayed America's victory in nearly wiping out polio around the world by stopping the funding to stamp it out in the last 2 countries on earth with the virus still present. Want to know what happens when we stop funding this type of work? Just look at Kansas, where the outbreak of tuberculosis right now grows. So it's not just about health programs. Economic development programs in Latin America build stronger communities and help reduce migration to the United States. Good governance, independent media, civil society programs in developing countries help break debt traps from China and ensure citizens can enjoy their God-given rights. Bottom line, who wins when we pull back from one of America's greatest strengths? China wins. Russia wins. Our adversaries win. So yes, this is a betrayal. This is a betrayal of our national security. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. I think I called it exactly right what the arguments were going to be. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We are pleased to have our panel of witnesses here today on this important topic. Max Primorak, Senior Research Fellow at the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. The Honorable Ted Yoho, former U.S. Representative from Florida's 3rd Congressional District, and the Honorable Andrew Natsios, former administrator at the U.S. Agency for International Development. This committee recognizes the importance of the issues before us and is grateful to have you here to speak with us today. Your full statements will be made a part of the record, and I'll ask each of you to keep your comments, spoken remarks to less than 5 minutes in order to allow time for member questions. Hopefully you give us something that more than what we could just read in your opening statements. And I would also ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. McCormick, be allowed to sit on the dais and participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize Mr. Primorak for your opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to testify before this committee. My name is Max Primorak. I am a Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I previously served at the U.S. Agency for International...
PEPFAR saves lives! Restore AIDS now! PEPFAR saves lives! Restore AIDS funding now! PEPFAR saves lives! Restore AIDS funding now!
PEPFAR saves lives! Restore AIDS
AIDS funding now. PEPFAR saves lives. Restore 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 AIDS funding now.
I guess these guys don't watch the news. They didn't realize that PEPFAR was one of the many programs that did prove to be life-saving, so the funding was restored. Somebody better give them a link to, I don't know, maybe Fox News or something like that. You may resume your opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, I previously served at the U.S. Agency for International Development and the U.S. Department of State. I've dedicated 35 years to international relations work. The views I express here today are my own. President Donald Trump's decision to shutter USAID reflects the agency's loss of bipartisan support in Congress and the trust of the American people. It exposes a bureaucracy that went off the ideological rails and no longer reflects the will or the values of the American people. What should be and must be an effective tool of U.S. foreign policy has turned into a partisan global vehicle focused on spending money rather than achieving concrete outcomes aligned with American interests and on imposing radical social ideas that divide us at home and spur resentment abroad. They refuse to be held accountable to Congress and American taxpayers who fund them. Advocates evoke dangers to our national security, citing programs to counter communist China, protect us from the global spread of infectious diseases, and provide life-saving humanitarian aid. I understand the importance of these programs. At USAID, I co-chaired a counter-China interagency group, oversaw containment of 2 Ebola outbreaks, and led the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. But USAID's obsession with identity politics, gender fluidity, population control, and climate fanaticism undermined these goals. Americans are now aware of massive waste, fraud, and abuse of their money. Every single project was corrupted by this radical agenda. They are not happy. USAID's leadership failed in its most basic fiduciary responsibility, and that is to avoid the kinds of reputational risks that would imperil the agency's legitimacy with Congress and the American people. USAID pushed developing countries to rely on communist China for their green energy needs. 2 years ago, 131 African lawmakers and religious leaders from 13 countries implored Congress not to use PEPFAR to promote abortion, stating, "We want to express our concerns and suspicions that this funding is supporting abortion, that it violates our core beliefs concerning life, family, and religion." Many Africans have told me, but also from other places in the world, the Chinese do not ask us to give up our religion to do business with them. Mr. Chairman, our aid approach has severely harmed our global standing. USAID's humanitarian system is also broken. In Gaza, American aid financed Hamas's campaign to exterminate Israel. Similarly, in Afghanistan, Yemen, and Syria, where we lack physical presence to ensure that our aid is not diverted to terrorists, our aid is sustaining these war economies. USAID failed to properly manage the billions of dollars entrusted to it. This committee discovered that USAID partners were charging 50% or more for overhead. A government audit showed that USAID could not account for overhead charges concerning $142 billion worth of awards. These funds proved a boon for the progressive-dominated foreign aid industry. President Trump's leadership has created a unique opportunity to fast-track important reforms of our aid system. Secretary Rubio might look at the reforms made during the last Trump administration. Our starting point was that the purpose of foreign aid is to end the need for it. Foreign aid is not an international welfare program. USAID is not an international NGO. These must align with American interests and values. A final point. Congress must also do its part. Why should pro-Hamas South Africa, Beijing's point country in Africa, receive billions of dollars of aid from us? We should support our friends instead. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Primorak. I now recognize Mr. Yoho for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Meeks, and members of the committee, it's an honor to participate in this hearing regarding USAID. I'm a former member of Congress serving from 2013 to 2021, representing Florida's 3rd Congressional District. During my 8 years in Congress, I served on this and the Agricultural Committee. I had the honor to serve as chairman of the Asia Pacific Subcommittee during the 115th Congress. I entered Congress.
Mr. Yoho, could you move a little closer to your mic?
It'll help turn it on too, won't it?
Thank you.
I lost that knowledge already, huh? I entered Congress with the goal of eliminating foreign aid for various reasons. Looking back, I was ignorant on what I thought foreign aid was, what it did, and thought it was unnecessary. Soon after my first foreign congressional delegation trip, I realized that foreign aid, when used properly, can be a tool in soft diplomacy that strengthens the nation's economy, security, increases trade, decreases migration, creates strong partners and allies. When used improperly, it has the opposite effect on both our friends and adversaries and wastes taxpayers' money. I became a strong proponent of reforming international assistance by working in a bipartisan and bicameral fashion with my co-sponsors, along with the first Trump administration when we introduced the BUILD Act that authorized the creation of the DFC. This was the largest reform in foreign aid in over 2 decades, and my goal was to move countries from aid to trade with the use of effective tools managed correctly. I chaired, along with Congressman Adam Smith, the Effective Aid Caucus and met with members and outside groups to improve efficiency and effectiveness on assistance. This committee has had many hearings dealing with USAID. It's frustrating that an agency set up to further our security, prosperity, engage in humanitarian projects, and work to prevent the spread of diseases, hunger, and conflict have strayed so far from its original intent when it was created under President Kennedy in 1961. USAID has lost the trust of a large portion of the American people and the international community. Remember, President Lincoln, he said, with public support, you can do almost anything. Without it, you can't do anything. The redesigned U.S. foreign assistance entity will have to work hard to recreate that trust here and abroad. Many new reforms are necessary in USAID. There are many ways reform can be performed. And many administrations, and as I heard here today, Congresses have acknowledged this. Yet we did not act. The Trump administration acted, and there's a lot of angst and concerns about who has authority, how's it going to be done. Those debates will go on as long as people want to debate, criticize, and complain. President Trump and Secretary Rubio stated the objectives of international aid very clearly moving forward. Does it make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous? It'll serve the nation, our security, and economy, as well as developing nations and our allies to get new reforms in place as soon as possible. Not all aid is bad, nor is it all good. We should focus on those programs that are good and make them better and more effective. Programs that were misused and not aligned with the administration should be eliminated. Congress should look to support programs that have a proven track record of success, and there are many examples to look at, and I'll be happy to discuss those. Moving forward, I would recommend the Trump administration place aid into 2 categories. First, the hard infrastructure projects like road, water, energy, transportation. These are the projects that are necessary to build an economy in the recipient country so we can wean them off of aid. The U.S. government has instruments like the DFC, MCC, tasked with the heavy lifting in initial phases of a project by providing risk insurance, technical assistance, and expertise, and brings in outside investors and other nations' DFIs. Second, the humanitarian side of assistance via a repurposed USAID type entity working synergistically with the DFC and other USG agencies. Feed the Future, African Growth, and Opportunity Act are effective health and food security programs when implemented properly and generate much soft power goodwill. Unfortunately, if mismanaged, we lose credibility, money, and drive the affected nations to our adversaries. By pausing U.S. international assistance, a vacuum is created. China, Russia, or other are already moving in to fill those voids. The U.S. must quickly bring back the authorization, funding, and a knowledgeable workforce to implement those programs that align with the administration's goal, does it make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous? One last point. By not being effectively present can be arguably worse than pausing a program. And all you have to do is look at South and Central America and look at how much we've ceded to China and their influence from Russia, China, and Iran. That has to be dealt with immediately. That's a national security threat. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I yield back my time and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Yoho. I now recognize Mr. Natsios for your opening statement.
Thank you very much. I speak for myself today. I've been involved in humanitarian work and development work.
Let's try that microphone one more time. Maybe pull it a little closer.
Okay, how's that?
Much better.
Better, okay. I speak for myself today. I don't represent anyone. And I've been doing this work since 1989 when I joined the Bush administration, the first Bush administration, as the director of the Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance when the world order was collapsing. And our little office, along with the Food for Peace office, saved tens of millions of lives around the world, which they continued to do through the BHA Bureau, which is now much larger than it was when I was there. If you're upset about getting off course, so am I. But let's course correct, not course destroy. When I took over AID as the administrator in Bush 43, W's administration, in early 2001, I ordered my deputy to begin reviewing every single project, every single program in AID, line by line, and we eliminated 80 programs over a month. And we moved that cash back into the program because there was a cassava mosaic that was destroying the cassava crop in Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Eastern Congo. And there was a risk of a famine. And we got cuttings in, and we stopped the pandemic, the disease pandemic for the cassava. My point is, I eliminated a lot of philosophically offensive programs that a conservative administration would not tolerate. And when the Democrats took over, they moved the agency to the left. I moved it to the right. The Obama people actually said I was very right-wing. I was the most right-wing administrator in the history of the agency, and yet the career people followed what I wanted to do in the agency. We put heavy emphasis on economic growth. Some of the things you've criticized, sir, with all due respect, are economic growth programs that have been highly successful. 10% of the workforce in Egypt is from tourism. AID has properly invested $100 million over the years, and it's massively increased the number of jobs in Egypt. They are our ally. Don't we want people working instead of being unemployed? It is 12% of the GDP of Egypt, tourism. We call it development tourism. We do it in Lebanon. We do it in Tunisia. We've done it in Kosovo and in Bosnia. We've done it in Morocco. We do it all over the world. It brings in revenue and employs people. It's an economic growth project. I believe in economic growth. I believe in the private sector. I believe in free markets. That's what AID does. The notion that AID is some kind of a Marxist institution is absolutely ridiculous, okay? I know the career officers. I work with them. There is a career track called the private sector officers. And what do? They work with the business community. I started a program which the Democrats continued called the Global Development Alliance. We started it very early on, 2001. What it does is it matches AID money with corporate money to supply their supply chains. We do this all over the world. We're working with hundreds of American corporations. We've raised $60 billion in private sector funding with the American business community to increase jobs all over the world. We've been doing this for 24 years, very successfully. The Europeans and the Canadians and the Australians have taken our lead in this and tried to replicate these public-private alliances. 25% of the money in those GDAs is U.S. government money. 75% is private money. We invest together. We don't give them any money. They don't give us any money. We design the project. We co-invest, and then we manage it. The notion that AID is irresponsible in terms of its oversight is utter nonsense. I wrote an essay 12 years ago called The Clash of the Counter-Bureaucracy and Development. It was published. It's the most cited thing I've written in the scholarly literature. And it was based on my frustration with the level over and over and over again of oversight. The Inspector General, the Special Inspector General. Why do we need two Inspector Generals in Afghanistan and in Iraq? Then we have the GAO, we have the OMB, we have the Congressional Oversight Committee. Every line of what AID does is overseen by 7 different levels of oversight. You know why money disappears? I'll tell you why. Where do we work? Where do we work? Christian NGOs are now delivering food in Sudan in a famine. There will be 2 million people dead by the end of this year. Those are the projections. There is no government in Sudan. There's no police in Sudan. There are no courts.
I thank you for your opening remarks this morning. And I now recognize Chairman Emeritus, Ranking Member Meeks, for his 5 minutes of questioning. Chairman Emeritus McCall for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I was chairman of this committee, I got congressional notifications of spending programs from USAID and State Department, and I put holds on those programs, many listed by the chairman. Instead of working with me, the administration, the prior Biden administration, decided to blow through those holds, bucking a long-standing tradition. And I want to go through some of those I put on hold. $1.5 million to promote LGBTQ causes for immigrants in Latin America, allowing them to litigate against foreign governments, primarily Catholic nations. I don't know how that advances the U.S. interests abroad. And as a Catholic myself, I find that very offensive. We've also heard about the $15 million for condoms and contraceptives to Afghanistan, a country under Sharia law, $15 million. What did USAID do? They blew through my holds in complete and utter disregard of this committee's oversight responsibilities. I also uncovered the department had spent $500,000 to advance atheism in Nepal. Atheism in a country where Tibetan Buddhists is a predominant religion. What does that have to do with advancing U.S. interest abroad? The Humanist International Group that they gave money to, the $500,000, the CEO called the Catholic Church an institution you should be ashamed to be involved with. Our taxpayer dollars to condemn the Catholic Church. Again, as a Catholic, I find that extremely offensive. And then the one we've heard so much about, $20,000 for drag shows and drag workshops in Ecuador. Mr. Chairman, I've seen the video you sent out. It is utterly disgusting to the American taxpayer that we are funding that kind of behavior. All these programs gave USAID a black eye. And that's unfortunate. Because you go back to the Marshall Plan, really the genesis for thinking about the USAID. The Marshall Plan was one of the most successful programs we endeavored in after World War II to make sure a Hitler never rose from the ashes again. The Food for Peace program, sir, that you discussed, the American farmer benefits from this. It's been extremely successful. Why was USAID created in the first place in 1961? It was to counter the Soviet Union during the Cold War. I believe it still has a legitimate purpose to counter the rising threat of China and Belt and Road and our other foreign adversaries. It also has the ability to counter terrorism. Lindsey Graham and I passed the Global Fragility Act. State, DOD, USAID, all working together to destabilize nations which breed terrorism. PEPFAR, one of the most successful global health programs ever developed under President Bush. Yet all of this is called into question because of the irresponsibility of the Biden administration's woke agenda and policies. Mr. Yoho, we've been friends. We work together, colleagues. I think your greatest legacy is the BUILD Act, and we need to reinforce that policy as well. But when you look at the core mission, all these programs need to go, and they will be gone. But as we look at program by program and strip down to the core mission, do you still believe that this is a worthwhile endeavor, the core mission of USAID?
I do. I think what you see over a period of time is a mission creep. You know, these programs were designed with purity of purpose. This is what they're supposed to do. And when you get mission creep, you get these things that we're seeing, and they're indefensible, some of the programs that you guys mentioned. And that loses trust, like you said. And in business, what I've learned, and I think everybody can agree with this, people like to do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. If that's true with us on a business setting, it's the same in nations. If other nations know us, they like us, and they trust us, they're going to do business with us. And we've heard this over and over again. You know, it's been brought up by other leaders that...
And can I just ask my time,
Sure.
Is it in our national security interest to maintain the core mission, and I would argue under the State Department for proper supervision?
Yes, it is. And if we don't do that, we cede that leadership to other people.
I now recognize Ranking Member Meeks for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I, too, am a chairman emeritus of this committee, and I can recall where President Trump, when he was the president, blew past some of my things that I wanted to hold. In fact, he's blown past some already in this term. So that's just the will of what presidents do at times in that regards. But in this instance, 93 missions, every one has been closed. Every one. That's not trying to fix something. That's destroying something. But let me just stop there, because one of the reasons why I asked Mr. Nassios to testify here, because he is a lifelong Republican, and he understands the insides and the outsides of running USAID. More so than anybody, no disrespect to anybody that's on this panel. He's the one that has done it. And I will admit, we don't agree on certain things. Democrats and Republicans don't agree. Some things that Republicans do that I believe is full of waste, destructive, but if they win the elections, they have a choice to try to move it in that direction. When Democrats win, what we stand for, we move in our direction. That's part of having a free democratic society. We're not Russia. So I want to put the politics aside for this discussion and ask Mr. Nassios, can you explain to the committee why you believe foreign assistance and the work of USAID, as you've done so, is so essential, and you feel so passionately enough about it that you did respond? Because I've seen administrators, Democrats and Republicans alike, who have worked at USAID alike, come out against closing USAID. Can you tell us that today?
Well, let me tell you two stories. One story is my last month at AID. No one knew except my wife I was going to leave and teach at Georgetown. And this was December of 2005. And I always would get a briefing from the director of counterterrorism at the CIA. And he came in to see me and he said, Mr. Natsios, the chatter is you're coming and they're going to attempt to assassinate you. I said, who? He said, well, obviously the Taliban. I said, why are they going to assassinate me? Because you're the head of AID. They can't deal with AID. They can deal with the military. They just shoot each other. But they can't build health clinics. We built 400 health clinics. We got the child mortality rates and the maternal mortality rates down by 1/3. It took 7 years to do that, but we did it very successfully. And we opened schools. We published 90 million textbooks in the schools to get the kids back in school. And the Taliban can't deal with that. They're going to try, and we advise you not to go. I said, well, let me think about that. But if you do go, announce you've arrived as you're stepping on the plane to leave. I said, what? He said, announce when you're stepping on the plane to leave, announce you've arrived. So in other words, they won't know you're there. So I went, I decided to go, and nothing happened, and I did what he suggested. But what I found out was, from talking to the mullahs in the village, the religious leaders who were pro-democracy and pro-America, that the Taliban disregarded the greatest enemy of the Taliban was USAID. You know, in Kosovo, they named their kids USAID. They actually, the Albanians are Muslims in Kosovo, and they made it into a Muslim name, USAID. If you go to the refugee camps and displaced camps around the world, USAID is the image of the United States. We used to bring 20,000 students to the United States to get their advanced degrees during the Cold War. You know what the Chinese, you know what we're doing now? 900 scholarships. We stopped doing it. The Chinese are spending huge amounts of money to bring 40,000 people from the developing world to get their degrees in China. We should be investing in that. We're not. And I think we're falling behind, and we're focused on the wrong things. The amount of DEI stuff, I started going through the RFAs. It's a small percentage. It is not accurate to say that this is, and some of these things that have been shown, those are not AID projects. Those are State Department programs. Why are you blaming AID for what the State Department did? The F office in state controls all this stuff. Now, let me tell you a second story. After the Aceh tsunami, we did a huge response. Aceh is a part of Indonesia, which had a Muslim insurgency for many years against the central government. We did a huge response. We put the aid logo on everything. The mission director got carried away, 50,000 stickers, USAID from the American people. Before the Aceh tsunami, bin Laden had a 57% approval rating in Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world and a democracy. After it, he collapsed from 57% to 27%. We had a 26% approval rating. We went from 26% to 63%. Now you say, Americans like to be liked. We all like to be liked. But what difference does it make? President Uduono, the president of the country, said, I like President Bush. I like the United States, but it's very hard to work with you because you're so unpopular. Not after the Aceh tsunami. The newspapers in Indonesia said, where is bin Laden? When we need him. The Americans here we really don't like, and now we realize who our real friends are.
Thank you for answering our questions today, sir. We appreciate it. We agree. A lot of waste, like $10 million through USAID. Everything I listed was USAID. $10 million for circumcision in Mozambique. There's another example for you. I now recognize Mr. Smith from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Upon assuming office, President Biden repealed President Ronald Reagan's Mexico City policy, expanded by President Donald Trump in 2017. But the Biden administration didn't stop there. They initiated a new, radical vision that integrated aggressive abortion on demand into PEPFAR programming, called it Reimagining PEPFAR, that included explicit guidance directing recipients, and this is billions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer funds, to use their leverage to enact pro-abortion laws and policies in PEPFAR countries. Biden hijacked PEPFAR. And he shattered, I did the reauthorization of PEPFAR for 5 years during the Trump administration, the first one. I'm all for it.
And that there was the House Committee of Foreign Affairs in a heated discussion and committee hearing on USAID and hearing both sides, the work that has boosted the U.S. image abroad, but then some of the waste on controversial things like DE&I. So with that, we're going to a break. Stay with us for more.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore. ShenyunCreations.com.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is going to be Addie's room.
I think
you're really going to like it.
I hope so. Yeah. I know this road is there for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
Ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know this love is there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Welcome back. The Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to vote today on whether to advance Kash Patel's nomination for FBI Director. Let's take a look at the hearing going on in Capitol Hill right now.
On the communication recommending Allen's reinstatement, the Allen case was reassigned to another adjudicator, and I was transferred to a different unit, apparently in reprisal for reporting the wrongdoing in the Allen suspension. I soon resigned from the FBI to avoid further retaliation. I believe that Veltri, Perkins, and Gibbs were responsible for retaliating against Allen, and that Giuliani, Arzini, Perkins, and Gibbs were likely responsible for retaliation against me, end of quote. From FBI whistleblower Garrett O'Boyle, quote, I faced retaliation from junior, mid, and senior level, unquote, leaders in the FBI. More than 29 months later, I'm still indefinitely suspended without pay and benefits. Other whistleblowers have since confirmed that the FBI intentionally stranded me in the middle of a move and withheld our possessions to maximize the pain of my suspension. A new era of accountability and true whistleblower protection to the FBI is long overdue. FBI officials like Sean Clark, Sean Fitzgerald, Jeff Berkebile, Dina Perkins, Jeff Veltri, Jennifer Moore, Michael Snyders, Timothy Dunham, and other leadership up to Christopher Wray are responsible for what happened to me and my family, ensuring they no longer work at the FBI isn't retribution, its responsible leadership. From FBI whistleblower Steve Friend, Jacqueline McGuire was promoted to upper echelons of the FBI after sending federal agents to arrest nonviolent Catholic pro-life protester Mark Houck at gunpoint. As someone who lost my career by blowing the whistle on these kinds of abuses and needlessly risky tactics for cooperative subjects, I was offended by her being rewarded rather than held accountable. Her dismissal is a small step towards ending the FBI's weaponization and should come sooner, end of quote. From FBI whistleblower Mike Zoomer, quote, after witnessing federal prosecutors favor a sexual predator district attorney who used the power of his office to sexually abuse vulnerable women, I reported their wrongdoing to the presiding federal judge. Although the allegations weren't classified, the FBI suspended and later revoked my security clearance. The U.S. attorney responsible for the misconduct was named by President Biden to lead the Department of Justice criminal investigation, and the FBI special agent in charge responsible for the FBI's retaliation against me was promoted to be the third highest FBI official. He soon retired after he harassed a young female subordinate. Meanwhile, I went through an 8-year process to be reinstated, only to have the Biden DOJ affirm the FBI's revocation of my security clearance in December 2024, finalizing my removal. See how removing a security clearance is a tool to retaliate and ruin people professionally. And lastly, I know you're tired of listening to this, so that's why I said, and lastly, from another FBI whistleblower, quote, I've watched the FBI become an institution not, quote unquote, of the people, but of a select few who know the, quote unquote, system and process and use it to their advantage. Those people need to leave. As a whistleblower, I stand ready to help return the FBI to its earlier days of glory and return America's trust in what was an incredible institution, end of quote. Now, how can anybody listen to these statements from the FBI to know that there's a culture that just is not totally in tune with what law enforcement agency ought to do and conclude that everything is okay? These law enforcement agencies are out of control, drunk on power, and blinded by political infection. It's time to force them to recognize they answer to Congress and we the people. And those who retaliated against whistleblowers should be fired full stop by colleagues who think otherwise of protecting these whistleblowers. And I hope this message gets to President Trump. My Democratic colleagues hounded Patel to say he'd stand up to Trump. Well, these brave whistleblowers stood up to the last administration and they suffered retaliation. So why aren't my Democrat colleagues running to defend them and demanding the wrongdoers be held accountable? This administration must hold the bad actors accountable, fire them if necessary, give whistleblowers their security clearance back. President Trump, I hope you hear that. Put them in a position they were in before they had their retaliation. President Trump, I hope you hear that. If you can hire people, you can reinstate people, President Trump. That's part of what this committee ought to be focused on. Solutions to the rampant weaponization and whistleblower retaliation. These are two issues that Kash Patel is perfectly suited to fix because he's lived those issues. Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. After reviewing Kash Patel's record and meeting with him, questioning him at this hearing, I'm even more convinced that he has neither the experience, the judgment, nor the temperament to lead the FBI. A little history. 50 years ago, Frank Church led an effort to investigate the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They came up with a sweeping reform and conclusion. Congress passed a law limiting the FBI director to a single term of 10 years, subjecting the appointment to the advice and consent of the Senate. These actions were taken specifically to ensure that FBI director remains apolitical and is shielded from outside influence, and that no FBI director amasses the kind of power that J. Edgar Hoover, the founder of the FBI, exercised when he had wiretaps on Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders and branded them as communist. For the last half century, this law has served its purpose. At Mr. Patel's hearing, one of my Republican colleagues suggested that consideration of an FBI director is a, quote, shirts and skins game, quote unquote. That is clearly incorrect if you look at the record. I've served on this committee for more than 20 years during the consideration of 4 FBI director nominations, Bob Mueller twice, Comey, and Wray before this one. Each of these directors was a Republican, and I voted for all of them. Some game of shirts and skins. What it boils down to is this agency should be above politics. What we have just heard from the chairman is an invitation for a political free-for-all if Kash Patel is chosen as the head of this FBI. I will not be surprised when my Republican colleagues again claim that the Democrats have weaponized the FBI, as we've already heard, despite the fact for the last 50 years, every single Senate-confirmed head of the FBI has been a Republican. Even former Chris Wray, former director, has been a frequent target of outrage. My Republican colleagues conveniently never mention that Director Wray is a lifelong Republican, nominated to the position by Republican President Donald Trump, and confirmed to the position, get this, with the unanimous support of Senate Republicans. Unanimous. As a reminder, President Biden kept Director Wray, a Republican appointed by President Trump, in that position. But because he did not do his bidding, President Trump forced Wray out and nominated Mr. Patel, an inexperienced loyalist to the Trump administration. It turns out that Mr. Patel is already seeking retribution on behalf of President Trump, despite his status as a private citizen. As I revealed earlier this week, multiple whistleblowers have disclosed to my staff highly credible information indicating that Mr. Patel, a civilian, is personally directing the ongoing purge of senior law enforcement officials at the FBI. The ramifications of these terminations are dangerous, and they go beyond Mr. Patel's fitness for office. This purge has greatly weakened the FBI's ability to protect the country from national security threats and made America less safe. This week, I invited the head of the organization that represents FBI agents to come to my office and talk to me about the morale at the FBI. 2 women came and visited with me. Both of them had served as FBI agents for long periods of time, one for 22 years and another for 17 years, and they both were proud to tell me their fathers were FBI agents before them. They said to me they have never seen this kind of thing happen in the transition of one president to another when it comes to the FBI. There is only one person, nominally and officially, who is political at the FBI, the director. All the others are professional and career employees. One political person. But now there's been a request from this administration, for example, to produce the names of all of the agents and staff at the FBI who worked on the January 6th insurrection mob that assaulted the Capitol. Think about that for a second.
38,000 employees at the FBI. How many do you think worked on that case? 5,000 names. 5,000 names they want to disclose. It's understandable that these FBI agents are worried. They realize that the people who were engaged in that mob action on the Capitol, many of them were dangerous people, despite the full pardon given to them by Donald Trump. Let me tell you about one of them, just to give you an example. And if you question whether the FBI agents should be reluctant to have their identities and the identities of their families made public, his name was Guy Reffitt. He was the first defendant to stand trial on charges related to January 6. Sentenced to 87 months in prison for bringing a firearm into the Capitol that day. Reffitt's 19-year-old son, Jackson, turned him into law enforcement after the attack. Jackson also indicated that Reffitt had threatened to shoot him personally and his sister Peyton if they reported him to authorities. After receiving a pardon from President Trump, Reffitt attended Kash Patel's Senate Judiciary Committee meeting in this room. He posted on social media the following, and I quote, "Present and in support of Kash Patel, as the leftist commies continue to spew lies, misinformation and disinformation, my man, clean house Kash." We are inviting a political disaster if we put Kash Patel into this job. Can you imagine having worked for the FBI all your life, taking an oath that you're ready to give your life in defense of this country, be involved in all of the assignments that you were assigned to, and then comes a new president, Donald Trump, and wants to see the names of whether you were one of the people who was involved in the January 6th investigation, the largest criminal investigation in the history of the United States. I think this is outrageous. If we have respect for these agents, show it. To invite this political warfare that's been described already this morning is to the detriment of the men and women who are risking their lives for us in this agency. We have a list here of 6 executive assistant directors who have been purged already from the FBI. I asked the FBI agents, has this ever happened before with a new president? No, never happened before. These are top FBI officials who oversaw the FBI's work combating international and domestic terrorism, cybercrime, drug trafficking, and violent crime. In the FBI's long history, this has never happened before. Keep in mind, one political appointee, the director, all others career. The leaders who've been forced out are all career FBI officials who've worked their way up in the ranks and have decades of experience. And that's only the beginning. Acting Director, Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, apparently acting at Mr. Patel's direction, has asked for a list of FBI personnel who worked on any matters relating to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. He is the transition leader, or was a transition leader for the Trump administration. Meanwhile, 1,600, including one of the individuals I just described to you, January 6 defendants who were given blanket pardon by Trump are on the loose. Think about that. A man who brought the gun into the Capitol, 87-month sentence, blanket pardon by Donald Trump, and now they wanted full disclosure of the names of the FBI agents who were involved in this case. It is outrageous that these sworn FBI agents, who were simply doing the jobs assigned to them, now fear for their livelihoods and their safety and the safety of their families. It is unacceptable for a nominee with no role in government to personally direct the unjustified, potentially illegal firing of dedicated, nonpartisan FBI officials. And if these allegations are true, Mr. Patel has come dangerously close to perjury before this Senate Judiciary Committee. Why do I say that? During the hearing, when he was asked about possible terminations of the FBI by Senator Booker, Mr. Patel said, "I don't know what's going on right now over there." Mr. Patel seems to be unable to wait for Senate confirmation to carry out his plan of retribution on behalf of President Trump. This is a private citizen, Patel, with no role in government, allegedly directing baseless firings of career public servants and then misleading this committee about his actions. Given the serious nature of these allegations, I've asked the DOJ Inspector General to investigate. I urge my Republican colleagues to take these allegations seriously. I know you want to be loyal to your president. I know you want to vote for all of his nominations. I know none of you want to call from Elon Musk reminding you what he might do to somebody who votes the wrong way. But this really gets down to the heart of the future of an agency that is critical to the security of this nation. This is not the only time Mr. Patel misled the committee. Under oath, at his hearing, he implausibly told me he could not recall the name Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier. Patel, under oath, said, I can't recall his name. This is simply not credible, considering that Mr. Patel appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 times. Couldn't pick the name out of Stu Peters? No, I don't think I know that man. 8 times. And Mr. Peters has since revealed that he and Mr. Patel directly communicate via their personal cell phones, quote, constantly, close quote.
Life's daily battles are not meant to be fought alone.
We're not powerless, so long as we don't lose sight of what's important.
Don't be afraid to seize that moment to talk to your friends.
Cloud, you okay?
Because checking in on a friend can create a safe space.
The first step on our new journey. You coming?
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Seize the awkward. It's totally worth it.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9. The highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritang green vegetable omega-3.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
It is ruled by folks named Sarayuddin Haqqani. The Haqqani network mean anything to anybody in the room? How about Abdullah bin Laden? Who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding. If you think that the program under Operation Enduring Sentinel entitled Women's Scholarship Endowment, which receives $60 million annually, or the Young Women Lead, which gets about $5 million annually, is going to women who, by the way, if you read the Inspector General's report, is telling you that the Taliban does not allow women to speak in public. Yet somehow you're believing, and American people are supposed to believe, that this money is going for the betterment of the women in Afghanistan. It is not. You are funding terrorism, and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan, because Pakistan's right next door. USAID spent $840 million in the last 20 years on Pakistan's education-related program. It includes $136 million to build 120 schools, of which there is zero evidence that any of them were built. Why would there be any evidence? The Inspector General can't get in to see them. But you know what? We doubled down and spent $20 million from USAID to create educational television programs for children unable to attend the physical school. Yeah, they can't attend it because it doesn't exist. You paid for it. Somebody else got the money. You are paying for terrorism. This has got to end. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. In addition, we don't even have an embassy in Afghanistan. Chair now recognizes the representative from California, Mr. Barra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by, I know a lot of USAID workers, former workers, alumni are watching this hearing. I want to thank them for their work. They're patriotic Americans. They're out there, they're doing God's work, helping save lives and everything else. And I'm sorry that you guys are caught up in this. So I want to appreciate this on behalf of the United States of America. You guys are patriotic Americans. I've visited with a lot of these folks. I travel a lot, gone into refugee camps, and have seen what they do in terms of life-saving stuff. And again, it's super important work that they do. It represents the best of American values, and it is really sad to see these folks get thrown under the bus. When we talk about stronger, better, more prosperous, I think we're all in favor of that. We're all in favor of working together. Mr. Chairman, Congressman Yoho's my classmate, and he may have been more conservative than you when he got to Congress. Ted, you and I traveled, I think, on your first trip abroad. We went out and saw some of these USAID projects. I watched you over time, become the champion of the BUILD Act, a champion of reforms, and we've continued to stay in touch. Now, what saddens me about this whole approach, now I'm not going to talk about Elon Musk. I'm not surprised by how he's approaching things, but this isn't Twitter. I don't want a 21-year-old tech bro going through deciding which programs we should continue and not continue. Mr. Chairman, I want us to work and do that work. We can go line by line, or we could hire Mr. Yoho to go through line by line and say, hey, here's the programs that make sense, here's the ones that don't. But that's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's our oversight. I don't want that 21-year-old tech bro, probably has never traveled anywhere, has no passport, doing our job. Let's do this work together. And I'm not here to defend every USAID program, but I do believe it serves a really important purpose for our values. We've read Heritage Foundation reports. I worry about what's happening in the Pacific Islands. They put out a good report. We've met with them. We're ceding our influence there. We're already seeing China step in and take things over. We're watching it in Cambodia and Southeast Asia. Programs that are good programs like demining, China's stepped in, it's front page news. Let's not shut everything down. Let's make necessary reforms. Let's, as Congressman Yo said, let's focus on humanitarian aid, let's focus on development, and let's look at the programs that do this. For the American people, the most successful development program in the history of the world was the Marshall Plan. That was us. That was the United States of America rebuilding Europe, creating stable democracies, preventing war, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. That was us. We can do this, and we can do it better and smarter and not betray our values as Americans. But we should do this. This is Congress's job. It's not someone else's job. And I'm willing to work with you to figure out what programs make sense. Let's write a foreign aid authorization bill, but let's do it in a smart way. Let's get former administrators in here. Let's us do the work, Democrats and Republicans, to rebuild a better, stronger, more prosperous USAID. Congressman, we're friends, and we've stayed in touch over the years. I appreciate the BUILD Act. That was bipartisan, and your leadership there. I am a little bit worried because I've heard President Trump talk about creating a sovereign wealth fund, perhaps making that DFC's mission. Will you actually talk about the difference between DFC and sovereign wealth fund?
What I see is the DFC was designed for a specific purpose when we put it together. We wanted to move countries from aid to trade. That was our big thing. And I won't go into why I came up with that. We were on a Codell over in the DRC. And if they want to create a sovereign wealth fund, I think they should do that separately. And I think there was an executive order, in fact, to do that, which is good because if you put it in the DFC, it starts clouding the mission. Are we going to do development? Or are we going to do build the trust fund or the sovereign wealth fund? And you start clouding the mission and you get away from what I like to call purity of purpose. The DFC was for hardcore infrastructure projects that will bring in other investors in a region that needs those jobs and the opportunity so that we can wean them off foreign aid. Foreign aid by itself has not brought anybody into prosperity. But working together to build that infrastructure, to create that structure there, that brings in the opportunity, outside dollars, and then we create friendships and allies around the world.
Great,
increases trade.
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to work. Let's do the work here in Congress, in this committee, and let's build a better, stronger, more prosperous USAID.
And I commend you guys for saying that.
Could I just add something, if I could?
Gentleman's time has expired. I do thank the representative for wanting to work on the State Department reauthorization and look forward to working with you on that. The representative from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to submit for the record an article, Why Condoms Cannot Always Be Trusted. It's dated March 19th, 1993, and it goes on to say that USAID distributed around 800 million condoms last year, and this was in 93. The argument that condoms are not being distributed obviously has some holes in it, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Premerick, can you provide an example of USAID programs, a USAID program that was harmful to the U.S. foreign interests? You. I probably didn't say your name right. I've said it.
That's okay, Congressman. Thank you.
Nobody gets. Jonathan Jackson still doesn't get Burchett right, so we're good.
Now, I've heard a lot about the issue of China, and I agree that it's very important to counter China. But the last 4 years went in the opposite direction. The strong counter-China infrastructure that we had developed over at USAID was simply dismantled by the next administration. I can't think of anything that's harmed our...
And the Senate is expected to vote today on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination to head the Department of Health and Human Services. The Senate voted 53 to 47 along party lines yesterday to limit debate on Kennedy's nomination. Kennedy faced fierce opposition from Democratic senators, primarily over his positions on vaccines. If confirmed, Kennedy would head the nation's top health agency that oversees agencies such as the FDA and the CDC.
All right, we have to wrap up our show now, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD News today at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's coming up.
Remember, for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our app.
Don't forget to follow us on X as well at NTD Good Morning. Thank you now for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
I'm Gary Dunst. Have a wonderful day.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjion Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.